everyone, welcome again to the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with a daily race at Suzuka driving the Megane Trophy Group 4 race car. It was on Sunday, as you can see there. I'm starting from P1. We're going to go straight through to the replay cameras for the start of the race. As you can see there, every single car, identical car. This is a single make race and a standing start. I do enjoy these standing starts. I got away really well from the start. You can see there, maintaining my P1. You can see a lot of jostling around for position in the background. Very clean driving going on in this race, as you can see there. Going through turn 1, a race, a track, a turn 1 at Suzuka can be a disaster from a standing start, but you can see there in the distance, everyone seems to have got through that turn 1 without incident. It's quite amazing to see, and it's great to see that on a console game this can happen. In an online public lobby. There is not another single public lobby console racing game. If you went in a public lobby, that would happen at a Suzuka. It would never happen in a public lobby. Maybe in a league race it may do, but it's not going to happen in a public lobby. The only other game that it will happen on is iRacing, and that's on PC. So it really does show you. I know we complain about GT Sport a lot, dirty drives, etc., but just look at that is really respectful racing all the way through the grid. Just look in the background, not a single incident already so far in this lap, and it does show you that there is potential with this game. They can just tweak that penalty system. There's a lot of clean drivers out there that just want to race. As you can see there, I'm still in P1, just about holding the gap to P2, trying to push really hard in this lap 1. I was a little bit rusty for the first few laps. I hadn't been on for a few hours. I'd had a break, been in qualifying, did my lap, improved my lap down to a 2:06.5, and then jumped on the race. So I was just trying and push as hard as I can on this opening lap, because you need to build up a gap with this car, because the slipstream is very strong. If a car gets in your slipstream, it's really hard to get rid of. As you can see there, what I'm going to do now is jump back to the start from P20 and show everyone what that start looked like from P20, just to show how clean this was. This is a public lobby race. Just watch how clean and respectful the driving is going into turn 1 of Suzuka from a standing start. You just wouldn't get this on any other game on console. It just never would happen. Like I say, iRacing, fair enough, it does happen, but no other game on console will provide this level of clean driving and respectful driving in a public race. It's just amazing to see, and it really does show you that we probably do complain a little bit too much, because there is potential out there. I mean, this is obviously a top split race and full of S-rated drivers, so it is the higher rated drivers. However, it's still respectful and it's clean, and it's just good racing going on, and it's really good to see that this happens in an online public lobby. I couldn't believe this when I went back and watched it, because I looked in the placements going through lap 1 and there was no changes, and I thought, this is really strange, as if there's been no incidents, because it's very rare. But when I went back and watched this from the last place bloke, it's just total respect all the way through the grid, and I really do like to see this. It's great to see, and it shows you that Polyphony have done a good job with the game. They just need to fix the penalty system slightly, make it a little bit fairer, and tweak it here and there, and just make the penalties less frequent for little touches. I think, if it's slight touches, it's racing. If it's full on whacks, then fair enough, give the penalties out. But for little rubs and bumps, I think they need to be a little bit more lenient. But just look at that, great respect through the first opening few corners. As you can see, riding on board again now with myself, as I'm trying to build up some form of gap. I've got that gap to about 8-9 tenths, but it's just not enough to get out of the slipstream. As you can see there, P2 just managing to hold on to my slipstream. As we both now come to the final chicane on the end of lap 1, and you can see there he's very close to my rear, but he's just outside the slipstream. But he seems to be he's pretty much on the verge of being in the slipstream at this point. You can see it's just over a second. I'm trying to push as hard as I can, really. The opening lap wasn't too bad there. It was a reasonably good opening lap I did. Not pushing too hard, but pushing hard enough to try and break that slipstream. First thing I wanted to do was just try and build myself up a little bit of a gap to P2, just to give myself a little bit of breathing space, so I'm not under pressure of getting overtaken anywhere. As you can see there, pushing again through the first section, real technical section, where you've got to really push the car and try and get the car into these corners as fast as you can. You can see there, not the best angle into that corner. Managed to just change the angle into it and just get a reasonable entry and exit speed, and then working my way up the hill through that fast left hand corner, and then into the 2 right hand corners up, which is approaching now. You can see there P2 still very close behind, P3 also very close. It looks like it's going to be a very close race this. As you can see there, P3 just in the distance, just behind P2, maybe about a second behind. So it looks like only a few seconds covering the top 3 in this race so far, and I'm trying to push really hard to try and get myself out that slipstream. You can see it's at 1.1 seconds. I'm verging on getting out of the slipstream, but it's really hard to to break it completely. One mistake and he's back in that slipstream. As you can see there, it's now 1.2 seconds, which is pretty much out the slipstream, and I'm actually on an okay lap at this point. I'm pushing reasonably well, and then coming through this corner, one thing I wish I wasn't doing at this point, you can see I stay in 4th gear. Now what I've worked out is in qualifying that is really good, staying in 4th gear, but in race conditions with the fuel, I think it's probably better to go down into 3rd gear and really get the car to bite into the corner a bit more. But I wasn't doing it on the first few laps. You'll see now how he's caught up a little bit there, but going down this straight it's still around 1.1 seconds, so he's verging on picking up that slipstream. Normally the slipstream happens around 1 second. It's around the second gap that the car will start picking up a slipstream, braking hard for the final chicane again, going through the chicane and trying to push reasonably hard. You can see I'm going through that in 2nd gear at the moment, but I actually think doing it in 3rd gear is probably the best way to do it, because in the previous race I was doing it in 3rd gear and I was producing better lap times. As you can see there, going over to the left hand side to try and make sure he couldn't get my slipstream, which kind of loses me a bit of lap time, but I really wasn't worried at this point. I just wanted to try and stay out of that slipstream. As you can see there, he's starting to gain on me a little bit now and get back in that slipstream. He's pretty much in the slipstream again now, and it's so frustrating trying to break the slipstream on this track, because the long straights, especially in Group 4 cars, which are not the fastest down the straight, so when the car does get the slipstream, you can visually see them closing in on you a lot. As you can see, I'm pushing really hard through this section, and also is P2. Again, I do really enjoy watching these cameras, looking at yourself when you're in front and watching how the car movement takes place. It's really enjoyable to watch. As you can see there, also looking in the P2's mirror, you can see P3 is very close still. This is a really intense close battle, and one mistake will cost anyone a lot of time and obviously positions. I obviously don't want to make any errors because I'm in P1. I'm driving really well. You can see there P3 getting very close to P2 at this time. Myself got enough of a cushion. It looks like I'm managing to hold off around about 9/10 to a second gap, but every time we get on them straights, P2 is managing to close in that ever so slight amount, which is getting himself back into the slipstream and boosting him up to the rear of my car. But luckily for myself, I feel like I'm able to maintain good speed at this track. These opening first few laps were not the best for myself. I was making a few errors in terms of my gear selection through these corners. I was doing it the way I did my qualifying lap, which was better in the time trial, but for the race I found that going down to 3rd gear was definitely better. You could see again on the exit there, pushing in that 4th gear wasn't really, obviously because I was going through the first part in 4th gear, then down into 3rd gear, wasn't biting it into the apex early enough, and it was compromising my exit by running a little bit wide and losing a bit of time down the straight, and then he was getting in my slipstream and just gaining on me all the way up the hill there. As you can see there, again going into the chicane, and it's still very close. You can see he's really putting me under a lot of pressure at this point, and P3 is also putting P2 under a lot of pressure, and also P4 there just a few tenths back, maybe about a second back from P3, as this is a real close race at this point. Again, over the line, pushing really hard and just trying to make sure that I can just keep this lead. I felt reasonably comfortable because I felt like my race pace was better. I think without the slipstream, I don't think he would have been able to hold on quite as well as he was at this point, and now I need to start pushing a little bit harder to try and make sure, to try and break that slipstream. It's really important that I need to try and get out, make sure that he can't get the slipstream so that he's not gaining on me at any point to make him move anywhere. And as long as I hold the gap of around second, I'm reasonably happy. As you can see there, it's around 9/10 again. As you can see, pushing really hard through these twisty sections. You can see both of us driving really aggressively, using all the track, using every inch of the track that we can to try and find every little few tenths of a second that we can. And P3 also there, just in the distance, holding on still. This is a real close battle between the top three, and it's just a great race. And again, it shows you on GT Sport the competitiveness of this game. You very rarely get in a lobby and you walk away with a race. There are obviously drivers that you will find that can do that. That when they're on the limit, they're able to drive on the limit constantly. There are a few of them, but in general, it's very rare that you're going to get someone walk away with a race. It's pretty much, the majority of races, there's always competition in these races, and this again proves why we play GT Sport so much. I mean, just look at how close this is, as again, going onto the back straight, trying to get as clean an exit from this corner as possible and get on the power as early as you can, because the earlier you get on the power, the more ability you have to break that slipstream. As you can see, it's still around that 9/10 of a second gap to P2. It's such a frustrating gap because every time I'm getting on the straight, he's bringing it closer to 8/10, and then I'd get to the first sector and I started to just pull away a little bit. So you can see there going through the really fast left-hander, and again it goes to around 1 second, but it's still very close to being, him kicking up that slipstream. As again trying to push around that corner in second gear, but it just wasn't working for me doing that in second gear. I really felt like I should have just stayed in third gear like I was doing in the previous race I had done. As you can see there, he manages to gain about two tenths on me just on that one corner, and then that boosts him into the slipstream again, going into these real twisty sections. However, through the twisty sections, I found that I was able to pull away a little bit once I started hooking up the lap. As you can see there now, getting it back up to 8/10 already, and then trying to really be aggressive on the entry and through the mid, the mid part of the corner to carry as much speed as I physically could. You can see me revving the engine out and really being aggressive on the car. I do enjoy races like this because they've done this race that you didn't need to pit, you didn't need to change tyres. The tyres stayed pretty much fresh for all 8 laps, and this is what I like. This is more like racing. You feel like you don't have to worry about the fuel, there's no worry about the tyres, you're just pushing the car 100% every single lap. As you can see there now, we're coming to the midway point of lap 5, so past halfway in this race, and you can still see how close this is. P2 is under a second, 8/10 behind myself, and P3 is around 8/10 to a second behind P2. This is great racing, and this is what GT Sport is all about. 3 drivers pushing as hard as they can, trying to make sure that they all get the best result possible. You can see there, I am trying to break that slipstream, but I don't want to push too hard that I make an error. Because I felt so comfortable with this track, I felt like, with a gap of 8/10 to a second, he's not going to be able to make an overtaking move. So there was no point in me, while I was able to maintain this gap, and obviously even with the slipstream he wasn't getting any closer than 8/10, I didn't feel the need to push 100% because I felt so comfortable in this car. I just felt like if I really had to and he got a little bit closer, I had a little bit more in me so that I could really go for it. So I have to say, this combination of Suzuka and this Megane is pretty much ideal for myself. It feels like everywhere I want to put this car, it goes. I don't feel like I'm going to make errors. I feel like I've got real consistency with this car, and I really enjoy driving it. And it is so tempting to pick Renault for the next FIA event because of this car, because it's going to be so strong at some tracks. It will also be weak at other tracks. So it's a hard choice of what car to pick. But you can see that I managed to go over lap with the fastest lap, but then again, P2 is just grabbing that fastest lap every single lap. He's taking it off me by the slightest margin, and mainly because of the slipstream. It's such a battle this, and it shows you I was really sweating at this point. It was a hot day in the UK, and I was really feeling the pressure at this point. I didn't want to make a mistake, but I just wanted to get myself the win on this race. I did not want to get beat, but like I say, the way this car drives, I felt reasonably confident that I could maintain this gap. But you're still going to feel the pressure when you've got someone as close as they are. And I managed to go through that sector. You can see there a purple sector, and I'm starting to push really hard in this lap. You can see the gap building up and building up, and then going through the 2 right hand corners. I really wanted to try and push really hard through these and try and extend the lead a bit more if I could, going under the tunnel. You can see there attacking that corner and really getting on the power early, and you can see straight away I've really hooked that corner up and getting the gap up to nearly 1 second now, going into the tight hairpin. Another purple sector through that sector then, and you can see it's dead on 1 second as we go through the hairpin and accelerate now up the hill into the really fast left-hander. Again, he's just managing to pick that slipstream up. You can see it visually on that delta. He's starting to gain a bit again down this straight where the slipstream's bringing him back into play, and then going through this really fast corner. You're going to see now, look at the gear change. I think I went down to 3rd gear there, and just look how much more bite it's got into the corner. I could actually accelerate through the corner and then take a tighter line and get on the power a lot earlier, and then accelerate all the way up this hill. And again, I managed to pull away a bit, but again, once he's in that slipstream, you're going to see that delta start to come back down a bit, where he's just starting to pick up a little bit of a toe and that little extra speed that you gain from that. So again, flat out now through the really fast left hand corner, and again I'm purple through that sector, so I'm on an okay lap. Going into the final chicane, I decided to do it again in 3rd gear like I used to do it, like before this race and the previous race, and just look how much better I take the speed through that corner, and I actually pull away from him this time It's up to 1.3 seconds a gap, 1.2 seconds, and I go over the line and it's a 2 minutes 7.8, which is the fastest lap of the race, and this time he doesn't manage to beat that lap. Now I'm out of the slipstream. What I need to do is maintain this gap, make sure that he can't get back in the slipstream. You can see P3 has fallen back a bit as well, with the speed being upped a bit by myself, and P2, he's actually dropped out of that slipstream ever so slightly, and he's not picking that slipstream up from P2, and P2 is slightly out my slipstream, so he's not really picking it up too much now either. And you can see I'm just trying to keep it smooth now. Now I had the gap to about 1.2, 1.1, 1.2 seconds. I just wanted to keep it smooth and maintain that. There was no point me risking driving flat out. I've got the fastest lap of the race, I've got P1 at the moment, and I've got him out the slipstream, so all I've got to do is just keep this gap around 1.1 to 1.2 seconds, keep it consistent, and if I can do that, this race should be mine. As you can see there again, pretty much driving perfect at the moment. I've not made any serious errors. The car has looked comfortable, the lines have looked good. I've not really had any errors which have, I've lost the rear end. I've not had no moments that have made me think twice about pushing. The car has just been great to drive, and I really do enjoy driving this car. I've said it a couple of times. It seems to react really well with how I want to drive it. As you can see there, the gap still 1.3 seconds, and I'm just maintaining this gap now as we're coming to the end of lap 7, and then we've got the final lap just to try and keep it smooth and maintain that lead. You can see there's sometimes creeping up to 1.3, 1.4 seconds, and now going down the long straight, trying to make sure I don't get too far wide there and run the risk of losing the rear end on that curb. It can happen, so just trying to keep it smooth and maintain this lead. This has been a really great race, and I do thoroughly enjoy races like this when you're pushed to the limit every single corner. You can't afford to make a single mistake. Going, a little less of error in this race will lose you big, a lot of amount of time, and it would put me down to probably P5 or P4, because if you have a little look, there was another driver in P4 in the white Megane Trophy car that was so close behind. I just wish, the only thing about I wish they would have changed the track selection, because we had just driven this race in the sprint race, and then they add it into the daily race C. I think they need to have a word with whoever's doing these daily races and just tell them there is this thing called variety. You don't need to be doing the same track every time. There is possible explanations for why they're doing it, because obviously the Megane is the new Group 4 car, and the only thing I can think that they are doing is they're checking the BOP, trying to work out tyre wear. That might be why they've kept the fuel and the tyre wear quite low, so that there's no pit stops involved and they're just checking stuff. It is possible that's what they're doing, and it'd be interesting to, I'd love to know if that's whether they can analyse the data from these races. My guess is they probably can somehow. Every single race they must be able to analyse and check stuff, because it seems they're probably doing it a lot on the time trial leaderboards as well, checking it for BOP, and it's why you're seeing this car pop up a lot at the moment. And obviously Group 4 races, you will see that Nürburgring and Suzuka, it seems like Nürburgring and Suzuka seem to pop up quite a lot when new cars get added, and I think it's because they use them tracks quite a lot for BOPing, because there's straights and there's corners and they can work quite a lot out from them. So that's my theory as to why you see these tracks appear very often when new cars are added, and it kind of makes sense. They've done it as a single make race only, so that's probably why they're doing it. I just wish they'd I've just had a couple of days break from when they had the sprint race there, because I know some people will get probably comment on this video saying about racing the same car again. That's why I've done 2 videos today. I've done the hybrid track guide, which you can check out on my channel, which just went on this morning. As you can see there, now coming to the end of lap 8, and I've still got that gap around 1.2, 1.3 seconds. I've maintained it really well. I've pretty much driven the perfect race. Apart from the opening few laps, which were 208.5s and 6s, lap 4 was a 208.1, then a 208.0, then a 207.8, and then a 208.0. It's been really great driving, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this race. A great entertaining race where I was pushed to the extremes and had to pretty much drive the perfect race. So a little bit of a weave on the straight there to take the win, and I was thoroughly happy with that win. And P2 also had a penalty, which I'm guessing possibly was from cutting the final chicane on one of the laps. I did notice he gained quite a bit of time on one lap, so possibly that's where he picked that penalty up. I'm not 100% sure though. So another great race and a really entertaining battle. And again, just remember that first opening lap where not a single driver came into contact with anyone, and it was really respectful driving. That just shows you how respectful some of the drivers are on GT Sport. And that was a public lobby. That is not this is not a league race. This is a public lobby in sport mode. and that's the racing you can get in this game. So it's great to see, and thoroughly entertaining to be in that race. So if you enjoyed that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I do upload at least one video every day. Like today we've done 2, and I'm going to try and do more than 1 as much as possible. So thanks again for watching, everyone.